My name is Dóra László Gulyás. I'm Hungarian, but I live in Poland. I'm a director, and this time I'm the co-producer and the campaign manager of this documentary that we are soon talking about.
And I'm the director of the documentary film Shinto, The Way of the Kami. So this film describes the Shinto, which is a Japanese philosophy of life. Somebody calls it, some people calls it a religion, especially scholars. But when I arrived in Japan and started to speaking with priests, they always say it's not a religion, it's a philosophy of life that's very closely connected to nature. And in this film, we mainly discover this connection of people and nature.
How came the idea that you are creating a film especially about Shinto?
Well, this really dates back to 2017 when I was in Japan for the second time in Tokyo. I was finishing my two previous documentaries at the same time, and I was looking for a new topic. And since I was in Japan and I really loved being there, I actually decided that the next film will be about Japan. I didn't know yet the topic. That was very difficult for me to choose. So when I got back home to Poland in 2017, I started to think what this could be about, and it didn't really crystallize until 2019 because I had some different projects. But in the early 2019, I kind of could go back to this idea. I started exploring some different topics, weird topics, like, I don't know, something maybe connected with anime. There was really many things, but the thing that kept popping up everywhere in Japan was Shinto. And nobody really outside of Japan, nobody really knows what Shinto is, because it's only in Japan. But in every, let's say, maybe not in every, but in a lot of work of arts, Japanese works of arts, we can see Shinto, we can see Shinto priests. So I decided to research this topic, and it quickly became apparent that it could be quite interesting to make a film about it.
So regarding to that, so you had an idea, you started to research the topic, you decided to make a movie, a documentary on it. How usually the process looks like for making a documentary film like this?
Usually there are 3 stages involved, not only in documentary movie, but in every movie you produce, and that is pre-production, the actual filming, and post-production. So when I decided that I want to make a film about Shinto in January 2019, I immediately started doing a pre-production, which in my case was just sending like hundreds and thousands of emails to everyone in Japan and asking who might be interested in doing this wonderful film. And it took me about, I don't know, 2 months or something, or maybe even 3 months, like day after day work, and there was hardly any replies. So that was a bit disappointing. So I started to research further. I started to talking to my friends, and they actually recommended that I try to I shouldn't speak to Japanese people like directly. I should find someone who actually can be like my friend and their friend, and try to arrange it in this way. So I asked my friend, who is a British actor living next to me, if he has any connections. So actually, he has a connection in United States, who had another connection in Japan, and it so happened that there was this American in Japan who was living there for 35 years, and well, he basically agreed to help me. He lived in Fukuoka, which was actually really big coincidence, because actually I could have a accommodation there with my another friend. So that was really huge coincidence. So I started to work with this American. His name was Bruce. And there were around 40 shrines in and around Fukuoka. So we started talking which ones might be interesting, which ones might have interesting people. We narrowed it down a bit. And then I asked him to actually go to each shrine and see if there is any interest in doing this film. So he did that. He returned, and actually there was surprisingly big response. And he told me that actually in one shrine we have a woman, a priestess, which is really huge, because there are like very few women who do this profession. So I asked him to arrange a Skype conversation with the three of us, and also we arranged conversations with some other priests. And then the days passed. We had many conversations. And finally, I decided that our protagonist Hiroko would be really cool to. Well, the next thing was that Bruce was supposed to ask her if she would agree, and she did. So that was the longest and the hardest part. I needed to book a plane tickets, and I had like 3 weeks before leaving to Japan, and we spent 1 month filming Hiroko, getting to know Hiroko. Her let's say public side and her private side. And then after a month, we had to leave Japan. So we came back to Poland, and that was the end of the second stage. And now we are in the third stage, and that is post-production. So first of all, I needed to translate everything from Japanese, and that took 4 months and almost 10 translators. And it was really huge amount of work. I think we translated like, I don't know, 30 or 40 hours of footage. So, and in total we had like maybe 60 hours of footage. So it was quite an amount. So we finished that, and in early 2020 we started editing this material, and now we are at the stage of editing. And when we finish it, then we will have to do sound design and the post-production for video, so color grading, and that could take like another, I don't know, 2-3 months.
When you was close to choose Hiroko, let's say, you were already talking with many other people also who could be a lead in the film. What was usually the first reaction that these people gave to you when you approached them or your friend approached them about this movie?
Well, the first thing was they couldn't believe I want to make film about them, but I think it's mainly due to the fact that Japanese people are very modest. They are very shy. Well, even after I went to Japan, well, I had a lot of phone calls with Hiroko, and I explained her that it's important that I have her as a public person, as private person, that this will be really cool to have. She still didn't fully believe that I want to make film about her, and she kept suggesting that maybe I should film the shrine more, or other priests, or some ceremonies. And it went on, and it took me a really long time to convince her that this film is actually mainly about her.
When you were filming the movie, you needed to instruct somehow Hiroko, or how we should imagine it?
Actually, a bit of both, because I had to arrange with her some dates of the ceremonies, and we talked. He told me how they are performed, and we talked how we could shoot them in the best way, because I could only afford to have one camera on set, but I wanted to for it to look like it was shot on like 2 or 3 cameras. So I had to do a lot of preparations for the ceremonies. But actually, when we started to get each other quite well, and I started to document her private life, it was more like a freestyle. There was no directing of private life.
There is still debate to this day among documentary filmmakers if you are allowed to direct your subjects or not. It's a main issue. It's a very big issue. Some people say that you are not allowed to interfere at all. You can just document everything, and some people say the opposite. So it's a very tricky business and you have to find the perfect balance.
When you were in Japan and with Hiroko, and do the film, what was the, let's say, the happiest or funniest thing that happened with you there during the film set?
Well, they were two, actually. One was when Hiroko invited me to her mountain trip, and she went there with her friends. They rented this cabin in the woods, and there was a table in front of this cabin, and they were sitting on this table at night in complete darkness, and they were singing karaoke songs. So it was like really wow, because she was always so serious, so professional in her work, and now she's sitting here singing pop songs. So that was actually amazing. And the second thing was that she invited me to a motorboat trip, and yeah, again with her friends, and suddenly she started to climbing this mast of the boat, and like hanging from it and smiling, and everybody started to making photos of her. And actually I managed to film that, and it will be featured in the film. And this is one of the one of the greatest memories to to actually see her as a person, because she's normally always so serious, and actually under this whole seriousness there is also this normal person. So that was cool to kind of witness bits and pieces of her private life.
Did you have also a moment that touched you a little bit?
Yeah, we actually witnessed a night ceremony at Hiroko's shrine when the new emperor was elected in May 2019, and it was a closed ceremony, so no one was allowed but some priests and the film crew, and we had the privilege to film it, and it will also be featured in the film.
Did you learn something during something new when you made this movie, even regarding Japan, the people, or even just regarding to the field itself, so documentary film? So as a director, what you would say that you learned a lot from this project?
I would say I learned the most about Shinto, and that was one of let's say that was because I even started this film, because I didn't know much and I wanted to know much more about it, and now I'm in Shinto for 2 years. So but I've never really imagined that Shinto so much stresses the connection of people and nature. It's not something that happens a lot these days. Like most of the people live in huge cities, they don't really care about nature anymore. And kind of this project for me was like going back to nature and and starting to appreciate it again, and maybe seeing that there is something more, because Japanese people actually believe that there are spirits or energy living in nature, and that we should be thankful for the fruits of nature that we have. Well, I would say that it bothers me a lot that nowadays, due to Corona, we really are locked down in our flats. This year we were editing this film like for 4 months at least, and it was mostly nature, and I see this nature on my computer screen, and I so want to experience it personally, but it's just so hard nowadays.
And as I saw that now we have this, you have this Kickstarter project for the post-production to basically help it to finalize it. Dora, can you please talk a little bit about what's the reason of this Kickstarter? What goal you would like to hit with it?
So the main reason, of course, of running this campaign is because of COVID, actually. This virus, this lockdown, all this new situation that we had to adapt hit us really hard. I mean, by us, I mean the entire film industry. And the funds that we could have got just somehow didn't happen. So basically, we needed to look for some other ways. And all of us, the entire crew, are just really big fan of Japanese culture, and we really strongly believe in this project. And we felt like if we don't try to complete it somehow, then it's just somehow painful, you know, like when you feel that something really needs to come to life. And we decided that, okay, let's show the world that COVID will not stop us, and somehow art can survive. And we believe that if we find enough people who believe the same way, and maybe who are also very big fans of Japanese culture, and maybe they support us even with just a small amount, you know. If a lot of people just with like for example a price of a cup of coffee would help us, we could go a long way. And of course, yes, we shot the footage. This is really lucky, to be honest, because then right after the lockdown happened, and we managed to do the editing. But of course, everything takes funding, and we need to finish it. We need to finish the editing. We need to do sound design, color grading, again some translations, and then of course the release. Like for example, obviously we would like to send it to festivals, which also cost some money, so distribution as well. So we thought, okay, let's fight for this, let's not let it go to waste. And of course we also have a bigger dream, which is, well, it's secret, but maybe for a small audience we can say that we have, as Tomek said, almost 60 hours of footage. So we are now shooting a medium length film, which is like about 40 minutes, but the big dream is to turn it into a full feature. And this was a good test for us to see if we get enough supporters, we might be able to edit an extended version later on. And of course, we want to see how the audience will react to this version. Because in this version, it's more like about Shinto, and Hiroko basically is guiding us, but we have in mind a full feature where she's the actual main character, like it's really all about her. And we might even, we're playing with the idea to go back and shoot some extra footage. Of course, we have to wait for COVID to be over, but we have such beautiful footage that it would be just a waste to not to use it. So basically, this is where we are right now, and that's why we run this campaign.
I hope you will reach your goal.
Thank you.
Just a final thing, that what message you would like to send to those people who will be about to watch this video? Besides that, if they also feel passionate about the Japanese culture, it would be so good if they can also support this project. But what else you would like them to think about?
If I would send a message to people, if anyone is just as crazy as us about Japanese culture, then please let's just show the world that a pandemic like this cannot stop art, and let's just put some effort into it. And what would this film give us? This is really, I think, it came in the right time and in the wrong time at the same time, because right now that when we are locked up due to COVID, everyone is missing nature, and we are showing these beautiful images, exotic to be honest for our culture, and it's a very nice escape from a day-to-day locked up life to see something like this. So everyone who supports us obviously gets a private screening with us, so they will be able to escape from like an apartment, and for 40 minutes they can enjoy this meditative beautiful film, and maybe just escape the daily life for a little while.
Okay, thank you guys, thank you so much for this interview. I hope our audience will also, I'm not hoping, I'm sure that they will also appreciate it, because they are also crazy about Japanese culture, and I think they will value this content really high. And I'm looking forward to the movie, the documentary, when it's finished, and I hope I can also see it.
Of course.
Good luck then, and thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.